There are those who love the splendid steam train, the great and disappearing iron horse. And there are those who love India. And there are, happily, those who love both, knowing that the one was made by the other. To all romantic amateurs of the history that runs on rails and that which stands changelessly since the days of the Moguls, this is an affectionate salam to the past that created the present. Now, of course, development means diesel, a thing of little charm and no chuff, but that is progress. India makes her own engines now, and even exports them. Urban India couldn't live without its railways. Imagine a commuter traffic into one Bombay station alone of nearly 1.5 million a day. A rush-hour train every 3 minutes, each with 4,000 people aboard, or almost aboard, all packed so tight it's almost impossible to pick a pocket. Of the 2,800 million Indians who use the railways every year, nearly half are commuters. The suburban lines have been electrified these 40-odd years, obviously had to be, to handle this sort of sardine traffic. How could India do without the electric train? Well, in many places, luckily, it does. The puffing billy is still the workhorse of the countryside and of the hills. And its lover, historian, and defender of the faith is a dedicated English zealot whose life's purpose now is the preservation of the great Indian steam train in a permanent museum in Delhi. His name is Michael Satow.
The first railway that I can recall ever turning me on was the Mataran Railway. I think that's one of the most exciting little railways, built most improbably, very little known by anyone outside India, but it stems from the early days of this century. It's the only link with Mataran and the outside world, and it represents a technical achievement of some magnitude, even though the scale is small. I think a very good historical relic of the sort of technical ingenuity that was being practiced in the late 19th century. The railway itself is 12 miles of track, which on the map only covers 4 miles from point to point, but in the course of that it rises 2,000 feet. There are 281 curves, and probably the sharpest curve on any working railway in the world, because the radius is only 45 feet. And to get around these corners, they have special engines, which were the brainchild of a dilettante engineer, Sir Arthur Hayward, a landed gentleman in Derbyshire, and his hobby was railways, and he used to build his own engines. And they are the only known examples of this type of engine in existence in the world, and furthermore, they're all working very well. There are 4 steam engines on this railway which, since 1907, have been hauling the trains up and lowering them down. Outwardly rather conventional engines, but inwardly rather complicated and very novel engines, which must be a full justification for the design which went into them on a landed estate in Derbyshire.
Mike Satow was once managing director of ICI in India. For 15 years he lived in the country. Retired to England, he resolutely returns twice a year to the India he loves and the trains he loves perhaps even more. 36,000 miles of railway spread a net over India, uniting this huge country as nothing else could do. This was the one wholly bountiful legacy bequeathed to India by a British Raj, perhaps the only one. It all began in Bombay, and its memorial and temple is Victoria Terminus. Victoria Terminus was built, as was the manner of the 1880s, in the likeness of a shrine, a technological cathedral, a great caravanserai, the most flowering Victorian Gothic Saracenic Italianate Oriental St. Pancras Baroque, to the glory of Her late Imperial Majesty and that of the great steam train. So the British bequeathed to India the trains and the stations and the currency of a common language, and you might say a touch of the class system too, though India had hardly need of that. The old times of the Raj also provided the rolling stock, and some of these old beauties still remain, largely thanks to Mike Satow, whose dream, now taking shape in Delhi, is the Railway Museum, where the first of the old iron elephants is going. Not to die, but in fact to live.
Must be a historic journey, if ever. Did you manage to get the boiler examination done before it came?
Yes.
At Upper Chandasi? What's it like?
It is very good.
Is it?
We have got it tested.
So that means really we've only got minor repairs like the front spring pins and things to do.
Yes, only minor repairs.
And you've been running order?
Yes. Everything.
Fairy Queen is only the first of our exhibits. There are hundreds more to come. When the museum's finished, it should be the most comprehensive, perhaps one of the largest in the world.
400 years ago, the great and wise Mughal Emperor Akbar built the city of Fatehpur Sikri near Agra, abandoned within 50 years because its wells ran dry. Now it is a thing of dead beauty, a monument.
I want to see India's industrial heritage preserved as well as her monuments. After all, the Taj Mahal doesn't have much of a break-up value as scrap, but unfortunately a locomotive does. So unless we preserve them today, they'll just disappear. My wife Peggy, of course, had rather different interests from mine. She was very much involved with Indian art, Indian music, charitable work, and on many occasions we've been traveling together for long periods, perhaps, in Indian trains, because journeys are long, travel on railways over long distances becomes almost a way of life. A journey may take 2, 3, 4, 5 days even. And so you take your cooking equipment, you take your sleeping equipment, you may sleep in a railway coach, you may sleep in a station platform. Life goes on, and in the course of it, you ultimately move across the subcontinent.
The evening brings that imperative of the night, the ubiquitous bedroll. The bedroll, turning up each evening. No one who knows India will ever forget it, nor ever remember it without nostalgia, maybe, for the great railway names, the Frontier Mail, the Deccan Queen, the Brindavan, the Rajdhani Express, and even, perhaps, for the empire on which the sun did finally set.
One of the interesting things about the research work and the investigation work that I've been doing for this museum has been the need to go off into all sorts of very remote corners of India. The Rajasthan desert, for example, held out the prospect of finding a special class of 5 locomotives. I had reason to believe that some of the engines that were there had now disappeared or were laid aside, so I wanted to go and investigate for myself what in fact was still working there.
What a place is India for the engineer. Not only huge, but hostile. Rivers to be bridged, jungles to be cut, mountains to be tunneled. Nothing is easy in India, but it gets done. There are 1.75 million Indians working on the railways, by far the biggest employer in the land. The gangmen on the track pause to give a quick namaste to the official trolley.
What sort of token system do you use here, or block system?
This section, I suppose, is on needles ball token instrument. That's a small token, you know, and I'll show you at the next station. And that instrument is lock and block. You see, if it cannot be operated by simultaneous coordination of the 2 station masters.
I see.
And not more than 1 token can be taken out from one end.
So only one driver can have a token?
Yes.
The signal system works with some elaboration. The pointsman takes the token from the trolley. He then inserts it in the signal. He takes the key, approaches the lever, and pulls it. The points then change. The pointsman runs over to the point and locks it. He pulls the signal lever and the signal goes down. This wonderful rigmarole not only fulfills the Indian love of complication, it's also safe.
These are the gangmen, you know, who maintain the track.
Typical Rajasthan gang.
Yes,
You
Mr.
wouldn't have to
Bijlani's
ask
men.
anybody if you looked out of the window.
Mr. Bijlani's men.
You see, they are belonging to a particular Rawat tribe,
Yes.
which used to be in olden days criminals.
Were they?
Yes.
You've tamed
before
them.
the railways came into being. After the railways have come into being, we have reformed them.
I went out into the Kumblighat section on a single meter gauge line, and for working the heavy mineral trains, special engines were built in 1929, and they've been working there ever since. 1 engine on the front, 1 engine on the back. And since 1929, these 5 engines have been shouldering this massive task of moving the tonnage of freight up this incline, and are still in fighting fettle. see you relaying this with 75 pound.
Yes, we have relayed this track only about 3 years ago.
Yeah. Is this old stuff
Yes,
over
that
here?
is these tracks. That is these
Yes?
tracks. That
Oh,
is
look at
these
it.
tracks. Have a look. Have a look.
I'll say it's old. Come here, look. What's this? Got rolling marks on it. These are 1887. These are older than anything I've got in the museum so far.
I didn't know that.
Yes, they are. I'd like some of these. What are you doing with this?
See, we have intimated this weight of these old rail store headquarter office for disposal orders as a scrap.
All right, let's just see what lengths these are. 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 30 footers.
Yes, you are absolutely right. These are 30-foot rails. You are right.
Will you keep checking for me?
Yes,
Huh?
plus
Can you
kindly
do that?
get the orders so that
Okay.
I have the necessary authority.
All right, I'll do that.
The Indian railways are an enormous absorbent of labour, the one commodity perhaps of which the nation is never short. They are as hierarchical as India itself. There are those who are saluted, and there are those who salute. Those 36,000 miles of railway track need endless maintenance and almost endless men, which is not indeed a bad thing on the whole. But this immense system of communications needs all manner of men, all manner of skills and crafts and backroom techniques. The days are done when the lines were shared among many companies, the Great Indian Peninsula, the Madras Company, the Bombay, Baroda and Central India, the Jamnagar Dwarka and dozens more. Indian railways belong to India now. An awful lot of it still depends on that good old fossil fuel, coal. And a good thing too, since India has quite a lot of coal and not much oil. And coal is comparatively cheap and oil is ferociously dear. In consequence, however, a good deal of this loose coal gets itself nicked, as indeed do most movable and stealable assets of the railways sometime or another. Therefore, someone has to keep a pretty close eye on the scene. And before you triumphantly interrupt, let us agree that this scene was set up. It was enacted as, shall we say, a training exercise for the railway police.
The great advantage of the steam engine is that it's very cheap to build, it's very reliable, and it can be maintained by more or less anyone. The steam locomotive is a labour-intensive machine compared with the diesel or the electric. But on the other hand, labour is available in India and is very well versed in maintaining the steam engine.
They have, of course, to go to training schools to learn the complications of the modern systems.
Any indication on the signal post. Now, sometimes this signal becomes defective. That time, the driver or the motorman is authorized by the station master to pass that signal by written authority which on our Western Railway is prescribed on Form T88B. Second signal under this system of working is semi-automatic stop signal.
Howrah in Calcutta is the biggest passenger station in all India. Just a glance at Howrah shows how much of India's economy relies on the rail. Not just the passengers, but all the other businesses who depend on the station. The taxis, the coaches, the rickshaws, and the porters. 1,800 of them in Howrah alone, unpaid and living on backsheesh. But still, it's the ironmongery of this great business that absorbs Mike Satow. The locomotives, their hisses and snorts to be recorded here and recollected in tranquility.
WPP, one of the prototype WP class built by Baldwin's, of which there are 7 left, shedded at Faizabad, and number 7208 comes into Varanasi Cantonment Station, and this one happens to be drawing behind it one of the standard tenders, because I see the bogies.
Udaipur was once a princely state of great prestige and renown. The Lake Palace is now a tourist hotel of equally great prestige and renown, perhaps the loveliest in India. There in the middle of the Pichola Lake, in an unspoiled town, with adobe ghats coming down to the water's edge, you would think you had everything. But Mike Satow dreams only of trains.
Ram Kumar, the curator of the museum, had only recently been appointed, and there was much to show him. You can't learn everything by just looking into dusty files. I took him around with me on several visits. One of the more exciting ones, I think, from his point of view, was the monorail at Patiala. But there's the engine shed, and the track coming in here, and another track over there. Here's the remains of one of the passenger coaches, and here is Colonel Bowles' saloon, with some of the original paintwork and lining on it, so we can get all that. And then up at the front here, we've got the engines. Let's go and have a look at those for a start. This one's very good, but unfortunately, the boiler's missing off this one, and I can't find it anywhere at all. They're in splendid condition, you know, because these things haven't worked for 47 years. We've even got the original lettering on the side of these things.
What is this PSMT?
It's the Patiala State Monorail Trainway.
What is the history of this monorail?
Well, it was built in 1907 for the Maharaja by Colonel Bowles, and it ran for 20 years, came into this engine shed, never ran again. All that's happened is the rails have been buried by wind-borne dust, trees have grown up round the track over there between 2 wagons. But apart from that, the climate's so good, you see, that everything has been preserved very well indeed. You see, the principle of this monorail was for temporary light railways for building factories, moving materials about on construction sites. And they were never in one place for more than about 1 month. And it didn't really matter what the condition of the ground was like. You see, it only had the one rail under the centre, and the weight was about 90% on the rail, 10% on this wheel, which ran on the road to steady it. But after 20 years going over the same track, it got into a fair amount of difficulty because of the grooves worn by the iron wheel here.
Are there any such other systems in other countries?
Not this system. This system was only used in India. The engines, these engines themselves, came from Berlin. They're Ornstein and Koppel. The main thing you see now is, having found it, we've got an opportunity of saving it. I don't mind how long it takes to get it put back into working order. The important thing is that anything as historic as this just should not be cut up and sold for scrap. But you know, if we could get this thing to Delhi, lay a bit of this track, because there obviously is still plenty of track in the yard here. If we could do that, this would be an absolute winner. It really would.
Indians are great travellers within their own land. Some of them, you'd think they almost lived on trains. The vast bulk of them travel hard, third class, for hours and hours and days and days. Patience. Patience is the thing. And no one has more of that than the Indians. We shall arrive sometime, somewhere. We always do. An Indian railway station is more than a stopping place. It is, in fact, a way of life. Indian people don't go to railway stations. They inhabit them, sometimes literally so. The station is a social centre, a nexus of life, a bazaar, an island of activity in the midst of 800,000 villages, where you can come by almost anything you want, from an orange to a bangle. It may be a couple of days or 3 before your train is due, so what can be the hurry? In the meantime, on the station, one plays, waits, lives, waits some more while time slips by, washes, eats, sleeps, reflects on eternity. Above all, waits. Even on the track, there are pickings to be made. Even cinders are not without value in a poor country. And Indian railway values and economics are not to be judged by Western standards. Of course, there are hundreds and thousands of ticketless travellers every day. The railways tolerate them. What else could they do? Benares on the Ganges is the holiest place on the holiest river for all pious Hindus. At sunrise, it is a place for the cleansing of the soul. Yet this peculiarly sacred place is one of the major centres of the Indian railways. Most of the pilgrims come to Benares by train, after all, from all over India to this especially hallowed riverside, where one washes away one's spiritual impurities in the Ganges, though perhaps acquiring a few physical ones in the process. And the tireless Mike Satow is still at work, still busy on the enshrining of the great Indian railway system on film, and tape and memory, and coaxing the powers that be not to forget what the railways were all about.
All over India one finds, amongst the great family of railwaymen, the generosity and kindness which has been so much a tradition of railwaymen. You find drivers who will invite you onto their footplate and quite frequently extend that hospitality beyond that of the footplate and even into their own homes.
How do you do? The master?
He is my eldest son,
Eldest one?
Narayan Kishore Sharma. Middle one, Navneet Kishore Sharma. Third one is Anurag Sharma. And myself is KK Sharma. Please now take your
Thank you very
seat.
much.
Thank you. Oh. गजाननं भूतगणादिसेवितं कपित्थजम्बूफलचारुभक्षणम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारकं नमामि विघ्नेश्वरं पादपङ्कजम् वागर्थादिसम्पन्नौ वागर्थाधिपते जगतं पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती के. We also respect to our guest, Mr. Michael. This is the way and significance that you have with us. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Sit down, please. We also.
Your family coming too?
Yes, बैठिए आप लोग भी बैठिए सब लोग बैठिए बब्बू बैठो
Come sit down here, right?
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
No.
Did
Please.
Mrs. Sharma make these? Or
Yeah. Oh yes, you should start all these sweets.
Because I enjoy this food. It's very, very kind of you to ask me to this festival, because I've never been inside a family house during a Diwali festival before. And this is really the Hindu New Year.
Yes, New Hindu
Yes,
Year.
New Hindu
So
Year.
everything we start today.
Yes.
Diwali is in fact the autumn festival of lights, when every Hindu home is aglow in honor of the coronation of Rama, the god king, or the king god, who could possibly know after 2,000 years. It's dedicated to Lakshmi, goddess of prosperity, so every little lamp and light is auspicious for both this world and the next.
वो फुलझड़ी जलाओ जलाएगा
आगे, आगे.
इसी तरह वाला और जलाओ
और थोड़ा आगे ना?
और थोड़ा आगे आगे सब जोड़ तुम कहोगे ना मैं ठीक कर देता हूँ
Now we really take to the hills. This is what the true railway buffs all wait for, the famous Darjeeling Himalaya Railway. This is the spectacular little toy train with its 2-foot gauge, scrambling up the mountains on gradients sometimes 1 in 20, chasing its own tail in extraordinary loops and curlicues. A single-line track with all the down trains going one after the other, and then all the up trains going up. Sometimes the track is too steep even to go in loops, so the train has to reverse itself onto a new level, while the one 5 minutes behind busily pursues it. It takes 8 hours to do its 54 miles, and it isn't always quicker by rail. Not when you can hop off at one side of the loop and hop back again on the other. You learn these techniques only through experience. At the little hill town of Kurseong, the little hill train runs smack down the middle of the main street. This is road-rail integration of the closest kind. For a while, the train is a tram. For all little hill towns, the train is an event, an occasion. It is the train that links these remote places with everywhere else. This is quite particular. For Mike Satow, a special little train, as befits a specialist. An observation coach for the #1 connoisseur of all Indian trains, and the Himalayan toy train in particular.
How many of the B-class engines are still working?
All 25 of them are
25, they're all working.
And online we have 16 of them.
Every so often, of course, some disaster strikes this railway. The monsoon washes away large sections of the track. And every time this happens, those of us who love it feel this must be the final death knell of the railway, which, after all, is losing money to the extent of 75% of its operating costs. But there are strong arguments in keeping it alive. First of all, if it were closed, 2,000, 2,500 people would be without a job in an area which certainly can't provide alternative employment. But even on the emotional side, or the more emotional side, as seen by the railway enthusiast, this is surely one of the most famous, one of the best known of these hill railways. I don't think anybody could fail to be moved by the excitement of the toy railway, as it's called, up to Darjeeling. It's always known in a most friendly fashion as the toy railway. And for 54 miles, this exciting little railway plods uphill over the top at Goom, right on top of the world, because when you come through Goom and into the famous double loop at Batasia, you get your first glimpse of the snow and Kanchenjunga looming behind Darjeeling, which at that point lies about 600 feet below you.
Now the downward coasting ride towards Darjeeling. Darjeeling, one of the famous hill stations of the high northeast, squashed in at 7,000 feet between Sikkim and Nepal, almost within the shadow of Everest. A great resort for the Saabs in their heyday and the rich tea planters from Assam. Now Darjeeling is a very cosmopolitan place indeed, with its Nepalese, Lepchas, Sikkimese, Bengalis, all the high ground people of the edge of India. And now, of course, especially the refugee colonists from Tibet, the society that insists on retaining its curious identity. It is possible to find parts of India that aren't within a bullock cart's ride of a railway line, but it isn't easy.
हेलो, कौन सी गाड़ी है? अच्छा, हम जा रहे हैं बंद करने के लिए.
India is so big, so various. 15 recognized languages and uncountable dialects, which could well have been a great balkanized confusion had the railways not, in their long, lumbering way, united it. Wherever you are in India, when the train comes, everything stops for the train. And when the train is gone, India takes over again. It isn't very beautiful, really, but it is beautiful. And because it's part of life, it isn't immortal. This will go one day, unless Mike Satow and his friends succeed and insist that it shall not go, or at least not go unrecorded and unsung.